30 minutes late every day, and then copping attitude with me when I would say, you need to bring your child on time. We have a situation where in the black community, unfortunately, there is a lack of father and parental father strong figures in the home. And so you're seeing a lot of behavior because of that outcrop of that. And instead of like blaming Whitey or blaming slavery or whatever the things that are going to be blamed on this panel, I'm 100% sure, instead of blaming Whitey, why not take a look at the behavior that's going on with some members of the black community and have a come to Jesus with them about it? I think instead of being defensive about
you literally just insulted Yolanda and said this is how she walk around in the world.
She's the exception.
I'm not worried about her.
She's the exception. Instead of being offended by saying that this might be a problem with certain black people, why not have a conversation in the black community?
Let's be real for a second. I came across a panel discussion that honestly stopped me in my tracks because it perfectly shows how some of these conversations in this country just go off the rails. You got a group of women sitting there, different backgrounds, different perspectives, and what's supposed to be a conversation quickly turns into something else the moment certain viewpoints get challenged. And that's what caught my attention. Because in my view, this isn't really about who's on the panel. It's about how certain ideas are treated, depending on who says them. That's where things start to feel off. Now, before we go any further, I want to be very clear about something because people love to twist this kind of commentary. When I talk about behavior or patterns, I'm talking about political ideology, not race. I'm talking about liberal viewpoints and how that play out in real life. That applies across the board, whether we're talking about white liberals, black liberals, I don't know, Asian liberals. Liberals, my point. Don't matter the race. Anyone, liberal ideology, okay? This isn't about identity. It's about ideas and outcomes. And from my perspective, that's where a lot of the problems in this country are coming from right now. So what we are about to look at is one of those moments where different perspectives collide and you can actually see in real time how certain arguments hold up and how others don't. And more importantly, you can see how people react when those ideas get challenged, because that reaction tells you everything. And I want you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and check this out.
New face of villainy in America now, black women? This comes as we're being bombarded by more and more videos on social media of them in street fights and brawls on reality shows. In the last week alone, black women have been blamed for the chaos at Daytona Beach's spring break. Law enforcement even calling one out by name, demanding $1 million in restitution for the damages in that city.
Here is number one offender, Elia Brooks. She got a certified letter basically saying that it's come to our attention that you're advertising, promoting, or sponsoring, or organizing, or arranging via social media a Daytona Beach takeover.
Then even some black men blaming black women for the new dress code at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo.
Embarrassed us so bad for the Houston Rodeo that like this have to be talked about. And we've been telling y'all this. We've been telling y'all that black American women, FBA women, have they ass out everywhere you go.
And then there's this guy who describes black women this way on social media.
What's your least favorite race to date?
I want to say black girls have great personalities, but they're like apishly aggressive, you know? Apishly like manly sometimes, you know, the way they act. You feel me?
No, I don't.
Some say no matter how educated or successful, some black women have been constantly vilified, like politicians Jasmine Crockett and Kamala Harris. Hence, the question remains, are black women being vilified in America now? And of course, we have a panel of guests here, women, important women. Let's well, yeah, you black too. So let's get to it, Yolanda. Is this over-exaggeration? Is this a fair assessment? Unfair? Your thoughts about what we're seeing on social media bombarding us?
So first of all, it's not new. Black women are always the boogeyman, like always. We're angry, we're aggressive. These are all things they say about us. And so I don't know why people are paying attention to it now. It was not true then, it's not true now. And if I am angry, considering black women are the #1 target of everybody, then I'm justifiably angry. If I am angry, so I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna own it. So again, this is not new, it's old, but you know what? I've been black all my life, I'ma die black, and the one thing I know black women will do is we will survive and we will thrive. And y'all can just keep hating, because for whatever reason, your name always on our lips. And so we must be doing something, because you want our lips, you want our backsides, you want it all. You want our color, you roasting yourself, you're looking old before your time, because you want everything black. You want to culturally appropriate.
All right, Angela,
let's break this down in plain English, because this is where things start to get twisted, right? In the beginning right here, and we'll get to her in a second. In the beginning, with the whole Daytona Beach thing. In the beginning, how they were saying how women behave in the communities and stuff like that. I've seen this sheriff.
Basically saying that is coming.
This sheriff. He said it clearly multiple times. This is not about race. He kept repeating it. What he was talking about was behavior. Pacific people causing problems, creating chaos, committing crimes. That's what he was addressing. Now think about how this works in real life. If you live in a city like Chicago or New York, there's a group of people constantly causing trouble in the neighborhood, breaking into cars, robbing stores, making it unsafe for families. That because, how would I put it? That becomes the focus. The issue isn't who they are. It's what they're doing. That's how regular people look at it. If your car gets broken into, you're not sitting there thinking about someone's identity. You're thinking about the fact that a crime just happened and you want it to stop. But here's where it doesn't add up. Somehow, when someone points out that behavior, when they say these individuals are causing problems, it immediately gets flipped into something else. It becomes about race, even when the original point had nothing to do with race. And in my view, that's a serious problem, because it shuts down honest conversation. It turns a discussion about crime and safety into something emotional and untouchable. And here's what really stands out. When people automatically equate criticism of bad behavior with criticism of a racial group, what does that actually say? Think about it. If someone says, we need to stop this kind of criminal behavior, and the response is, why are you attacking black people? That connection didn't come from the original statement. That connection came from the person hearing it. And that's where this whole thing starts to fall apart. Because now we are no longer talking about solving real problems in real communities. We're arguing over labels, while the actual issues like crime, safety, and quality of life keep getting worse for the people living there every single day. And let's go a little bit deeper, right? Let's go back to what she was saying in regards of her whole rhetoric, or her belief, or her statement on things.
And so we must be doing something, because you want our lips, you want our backsides, you want it all. You want our...
Right? So this is where the conversation usually gets uncomfortable, but also more honest. From my perspective, what we're really talking about here isn't race, it's ideology and the outcomes that comes from it. And when people say certain groups are being vilified, I think it's worth asking why these patterns keep showing up in the same places with the same policies. Think about major cities, like I say, like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. These are places that have been run by the same political mindset for years. And what do we see? Higher crime in certain areas, struggling school systems, rising cost of living, and policies that often make it harder for everyday people to feel secure in their own neighborhoods. Now, compare that to areas that lean more conservative, where there's generally a stronger emphasis on law enforcement, personal responsibility, and constitutional rights like the Second Amendment. In those places, the exception, in those places, not the exception, the expectation is simple. Follow the law, respect others, and there are consequences if you don't. That difference in approach matters. Now, to be fair, not everyone on the other side agrees with the outcomes we're seeing, and some will argue these issues are tied to economics or historical factors rather than policy alone. That's a fair point to raise. But here's where it doesn't fully add up for me. If the same policies keep producing the same results over and over again, at some point you have to question whether the approach itself is part of the problem. The founders talked a lot about accountability, the role of the government being limited but effective where it counts, especially when it comes to protecting people's rights and safety. And in my view, when policies move away from that, when they start excusing bad behavior or avoiding hard conversations, the real world impact is felt by regular people just trying to live their lives. And this is what this comes down to.
color, you roasting yourself, you're looking old before your time because you want everything black. You want to culturally appropriate.
All right, Angela, let's hear from you, your thoughts about this.
So here's my thoughts about this. I think the reason we're seeing more and more of these incidents is because people have cell phones, people have social medias. I don't think it's necessarily something that's new. I think it's been a problem. It's gotten more and more aggressive. And this is about individual behavior. This is about people who do not take responsibility for the way they act, look, behave. I can remember being a teacher in an inner city school, and I'd have one or two mothers 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes every day, coming in 30 minutes late with their bonnets and their pajamas and their footies, bringing their kid in, stopping my class 30 minutes late every day, and then getting copping attitude with me when I would say, you need to bring your child on time. We have a situation where in the black community, unfortunately, there is a lack of father and parental father strong figures in the home. And so you're seeing a lot of behavior because of that outcrop of that. And instead of like blaming whitey or blaming slavery or whatever the things that are going to be blamed on the
Look at her face, look. Look at her face to the far left.
blaming slavery or whatever the things that are going to be blamed on this panel, I'm 100% sure. Instead of blaming whitey, why not take a look at the behavior that's going on with some members of the black community and have a come to Jesus with them about it?
Bunke, your thoughts about this?
Well, I've been a teacher at both inner city and suburban schools. And in the inner city, we were never scared of school shootings, right? So when we're talking about different groups being vilified, if we're looking at the history of America and who has done the most violent crimes, it's your people. In regards to the way black women are viewed, I'm going to continue speaking, but I'm going to make sure that you're not intimidated right now, are you? I want to make sure you're comfortable, because as a black woman, that's what we have to do in order to have a platform, right? In order to be able to speak uninterrupted, you have to make sure that you make somebody else feel comfortable. So outside of what we're seeing on social media, we know that 600,000 black women have been laid off, have been pushed out of the workforce, when we continue to be the most educated group of people in this country. And if we're looking at this panel, that's also evident.
All right, Carmen, let's hear from you. Your thoughts about.
Let's bring this all together, because this is where the conversation really shows you how things get turned upside down. You heard the clip. There's a strong emotional argument being made about stereotypes, about being judged, about feeling targeted. And to be fair, everybody can understand the idea of not wanting to be boxed in or labeled unfairly. That's a real thing across the board. But here's where, in my view, things start to lose consistency. When the conversation shifts from don't stereotype us to everyone wants to be us, everyone is copying us, it creates a contradiction that people notice. Think about it in simple real life terms. If someone says society is constantly misrepresenting them, but then also claims that same society is trying to imitate them at every level, those two ideas don't really line up cleanly. That's what causes people to pause and question what's actually being said. Now, take the example right in front of us. Presentation, style, appearance. In everyday life, people borrow from each other's culture all the time, each other's culture. You see it in fashion, music, language. It goes both ways. Someone in New York might dress one way, someone in LA another. And over time, those styles blend. That's just reality. But when that exchange only gets called out in one direction, it starts to feel selective. And that's where people get frustrated, because now it's not about fairness, it's about controlling the narrative. From my perspective, if we're going to have an honest conversation, they have to be consistent. You can't say, don't generalize us while also making broad claims about everyone else. You can't say this is about respect while dismissing any pushback as hate. That's not how real dialogue works. At the end of the day, most people, no matter where they come from, just want the same basic things: safe neighborhoods, fair treatment, and the ability to live their lives without constant tension. And when the conversations move away from that and turn into competing narratives about who's more wronged or who's more entitled, nothing actually gets solved. That's why, in my view, it's so important to stay grounded, focus on actions over labels, and keep the conversation rooted in reality instead of emotion, right? And when you look at that, let's be real for a second, because this is where the conversation usually gets uncomfortable, but also more honest. In my view, a lot of this, we are being targeted narrative ends up being self-inflicted. Not in some extreme way, but in a very practical real world sense. Here's what I mean. Follow me here. When people see the same behaviors happening over and over again in the same spaces, they're going to notice patterns. That's just how people work. Think about everyday life. If there's a certain block in your city where there are constant problems, fights breaking out, stores getting robbed, people acting reckless, you don't ignore it. You start to associate that behavior with that area. Not because you're trying to label anyone unfairly, but because you're trying to make sense of what you are seeing and protect yourself. That's basic human behavior. Now, to apply that to what we're talking about. When criticism comes up and the immediate response is, this is about race, this is about gender, it skips over the actual issue, which is behavior. And that's where things get stuck. Because instead of asking, is there something here we need to fix? The conversation turns into, why are you attacking us? And once it goes there, nothing improves. From my perspective, if you don't like the way people are reacting, the first step is to look at what's causing that reaction. Not everything is going to be fair, and not every criticism is valid. But when the same concerns keep coming up again and again, it's worth paying attention to. And this applies to everyone, not just one group. The Constitution and the way this country was set up is built on individual responsibility. You are judged by what you do, not just who you are. That's the standard. So when people say this isn't about race, it's about behavior, the real question should be, are we willing to have that conversation honestly? Or are we going to keep deflecting and calling it something it's not? Because as long as the deflection keeps happening, the frustration is only going to grow, and the actual problems people are dealing with in their day-to-day lives, crime, safety, stability, those don't go away. So you see the attitudes and you see the pettiness and you see the shade being thrown, but what about the productive conversation?
She ain't lying.
Okay, well, I graduated magna cum laude in a language that I just learned at the time because I am from Venezuela. And we see the aggression in this panel with Yolanda and here to my right, and that's the problem. But now let's talk about Kamala and Jasmine Crockett. You know, Jasmine Crockett is the best example of somebody that instead of representing their community with grace is just being loud, is just being aggressive, and is dancing in the halls of Congress. And then we have Kamala, which we all know she got where she got on her knees. Her story is way long, and she just got where she got because she filled many boxes in the DEI. Let's talk about merit, not about color. As a Latina, I don't feel any woman of any color with that behavior represent me as a woman. I'm a minority. I want people to get places based on merit.
All right, Jasmine, Terry, let's hear from you.
So I think we need to stay on topic. So we're going to go back to Yolanda for her initial. Let's go back to history, right? Black women were told to cover their hair because it made white women uncomfortable, right? So the reality is, whether you breathe or not, baby, we're the standard. And that's what it is. The beginning and the end starts with the black woman. So regardless, whether you want to admit it or not, I think for the both of you, you stay on topic because what you just spoke about had nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Absolutely did.
So we're going to go back. So we're going to
Stop interrupting.
Let me land. So the reality is, for the both of you to sit on the side of me and talk about aggression, what is the difference in what you're doing and what we're doing right now? Having a conversation. And yet we're the one, you just literally called out both of these black women on the panel, and you sit here with your attitude and you have a problem, but you tell them that they're aggressive, right?
Well, I have a long story with Yolanda.
So we talk about it.
She mad because I whooped her on the congressional race.
So the black women,
no, you were very
let me finish, please.
And I've graduated magna cum laude.
Aggressive.
Let's
normal.
Thank you so much. So as a black woman, we're going to talk about history and we're going to talk about facts. So the moment that you realize that black women are the standard in who we are and what we provide into this world and to what we give to America in general, then you need to understand that. And so the reality is, everyone gaslight us and tell us who we are and, oh, you're so aggressive. No, we're not. But when you sit here, you jump behind a microphone and you're yelling and screaming and giving your attitude and what you do, it's okay, it's acceptable.
Hang on a minute.
Wait a minute, and you're the same person, let me finish, and you're the same person talk about calling Jasmine Crockett Miss Ratchet.
She's
and
Representative Ratchet.
So the reality is, when you sit here, we're right here, you're considered as being applauded for what you do, right? But the minute a black woman has an opinion and we have something to say,
it has nothing to do with having an opinion. It has to do
We'll be right back, and we'll let them continue this conversation in just.
Let's talk about that moment, because this is where everything kind of comes to a head. Someone on the panel points out what they see as aggression, and immediately you can almost predict a reaction. It's going to be labeled as racist, as you just saw. It's going to be shut down, and the conversation is going to stop right there. Now, think about that in real life. If you're at work or you're dealing with someone in your day-to-day life and they come across as aggressive, tone, attitude, how they respond, people are going to react to that. Not because of who you are, but because of how you are acting in that moment. That's just basic human interaction. But here's where it gets complicated. When any critique of behavior instantly becomes off limits because it might offend someone, you create a situation where nothing can be addressed honestly. And from my perspective, that's where frustration starts to build. Because now people feel like they're walking on eggshells, like they can't say what they're actually seeing without being labeled or attacked. And that doesn't lead to better outcomes. It leads to more tension and less understanding. Now, on the flip side, there's also this idea that any negative attention must mean people are targeting you specifically, that everything revolves around you or your identity. And I just don't think that holds up in the real world. Most people are focused on their own lives, their jobs, their family, paying bills, staying safe. They're not sitting around obsessing over someone else's identity. They're reacting to what's right in front of them. And when a response to criticism is always, this is an attack, it puts everyone in a no-win situation, because if people speak up, it's a problem. If they stay quiet, then it becomes we are being ignored. And that's what makes these conversations so frustrating for a lot of people watching. And in my view, if the goal is to move forward, there has to be some level of self-awareness. You can't say you want to break stereotypes while reinforcing the exact behavior people are pointing out. That's the disconnect. And until that gap gets addressed honestly, these conversations are just going to keep going in circles without actually solving anything.
How do we address it?
I don't think there's a way to address it. You know, I mean, what I think the ladies next to me, at least two of the ladies next to me do, is put on their big girl, black girl panties and like just stop the whining. And you know, it's interesting, they're talking about education, it's merit. Well, I mean, I'm a lawyer. I graduated magna cum laude. I mean, I was voted the most outstanding senior at the University of Houston. And I'm a double minority. I mean, I'm a black woman. When I walk in a room, you know I'm black. And the first thing they say is that I'm aggressive. You know what? Matter of fact, my mother taught me to look you dead in your eye when I'm talking to you and speak because I have something to say. And it's interesting that Angela's trying to act like she's a wallflower. Angela got one of the biggest mouths on this panel.
I don't
and what she always does, Angela literally has no home.
So many personal ad hominem attacks. And I'm sure Yolanda, the blonde-haired woman right here with the blue dress, I'm pretty sure she could have been came out the woman to the end with the cheetah on and basically said, you're trying to say that, in this case, she said that white women are trying to be like black women. You could tell that Yolanda is not trying to do personal ad hominem attacks in the blue dress, because she could have said, well, I'm pretty sure your hair isn't naturally blonde. You know what I'm saying? But it's all of that is just taken away from the conversation. And coming across this clip, you'll see that Yolanda, the woman in the blue, she's going to bring it back to the point she was trying to make, which is the productive conversation that should be the main focal point and the focus, and not the ad hominem attacks.
Angela literally has no home training. Angela does not allow people to speak. She always interrupts because she tries to distract. I'm not worried about Angela, because when she's moving, she ain't saying nothing. She's whining. She's trying to get the camera to look at herself. Now tell me why that's not aggressive.
All right,
Angela,
let's hear from you.
I mean, Sarah Palin, Christy Noem, Marjorie Taylor Greene are all aggressive.
All right, let's hear from Angela.
This is the way this woman walks around in the world, ladies and gentlemen. I don't walk around in the world like that,
Absolutely.
and I guarantee you that most of the people in this panel do not walk around in the world like that.
That's why you got fired at HISD.
Sorry, my apology. The girl in the blue dress that I was talking about in the blonde the whole time, name is Angela, not Yolanda. Yolanda is the girl in the cheetah dress with the glasses.
No, that's not why I got fired at HISD, but
So
that's
I think
right. I'm not done. Hang on a minute.
Lower your voice.
Hang on a minute.
Thank you.
Here's the thing. Back to my whole premise here. This is about individual behavior. And if you're seeing a spate of black women or black people in general just acting wild and out, dressing like hoes, ghetto ratchet behavior, and people are calling it out, not just white people, black people are calling it out, Hispanic people are calling it out. They're tired of it. That's why this black fatigue thing has taken hold. And again, with all due respect, the women on this panel are not who people are annoyed with, okay? Because the women on this panel are very successful, are very articulate and well-spoken. And I think instead of being defensive about
you literally just insulted Yolanda and said this is how she walk around in the world.
She's the exception.
I'm not worried about her.
She's the exception. Instead of being offended, instead of being offended by saying that this might be a problem with certain black people, why not have a conversation in the black community about
All right,
that?
Bonke, and make sure we stay on topic here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's wrap this up in a real grounded way, because at the end of the day, this isn't about trying to tear anybody down. It's about being honest about what people are seeing and feeling. From my perspective, a lot of the frustration we're watching play out comes from a place where certain behaviors get defended instead of addressed. And when that happens, the conversation turns into why are we being attacked instead of what can we do better? That's where things start to break down. Now, I'm just going to be straight up with you. This isn't limited to one group. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think a lot of this comes from liberal ideology in general. You see different versions of it depending on where you look. In some places, it shows up as disorder, crime, and lack of accountability. In others, it shows up as different kinds of extreme behavior that still end up hurting communities. Either way, the common thread is the same. When bad behavior gets excused or explained away instead of corrected, things get worse. And regular people are the ones who deal with it every day. Think about families trying to raise kids in neighborhoods where safety is a concern, or small business owners dealing with theft and chaos, or just everyday people who feel like they can't speak honestly without being labeled. That's the worldwide impact. Now, to be fair, nobody wants to be unfairly judged and nobody wants to feel targeted. That part is completely understandable. But at the same time, if we want things to improve, there has to be some willingness to look inward and say, okay, what role does behavior play in this? Because the system this country was built on, our Constitution, the idea of individual responsibility depends on that. I'll give you an example. Chicago, right? The teen takeovers is wild, right? And just teen takeovers in general. And the point is, with the liberal policies and Mayor Brandon Johnson looking at these teen takeovers just as, oh, they're just large gatherings. But they're running into stores. They are basically disrupting the enjoyment of people coming to Chicago, touring the city, individuals trying to have a good time. It's just uprooting everything. And they literally are like smashing people cars and stumping people windshield and with their feet, smashing people cars and just being Wreck-It Ralph, just being wild, right? And we have to address that. And does behavior play in that? So I'm using that example just to say from a liberal ideology standpoint and the policies that I'm talking about that everyday individuals go through. And that's why I said the Constitution, our Constitution, the idea of individual responsibility depends on that. You are judged by your actions. The standard has to apply across the board. And I do think more people are starting to speak up about this from all different backgrounds because they're tired of walking around the issue. They're tired of pretending not to see what's right in front of them. Conversations like this, even when they're uncomfortable, are part of that shift. They show that people are willing to push back, ask questions, and challenge ideas that don't hold up. And yeah, that can come with backlash. People might get criticized, labeled, even shouted down. But that's kind of where we are right now. In my view, the only way forward is more honesty, more consistency, and less deflection, and having productive, respectful conversation. Focus on behavior, focus on outcomes, and keep the standard the same for everyone. That's how you actually start fixing things instead of just arguing about them. So let me know what you guys think. Drop a comment, and if you made it this far, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Catch you in the next one, family. Peace.